I want to welcome everyone tonight to the Berean Torah study, and where we're going to be studying about chapter 6 of Revelation and the 6 seals. And as we always do begin, I'll start with a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. All right, tonight we're going to continue our study of Revelation in chapter 6. Put my glasses on so that I look all studious. And as a review, you'll remember that we had the letters to the churches in the congregations in Asia Minor in chapters 2 and 3, and then John, after that, in chapter 4, he's given a vision of the heavenly throne room, and remember, it was the door opened and he was able to see in, and he saw kind of a manifestation of God on the throne, and part of the purpose of all of that was to ensure that the people that he was writing to would have a comparison of God's glory and the things that were to come in God's economy and God's kingdom as compared to what they were having to go through in the Roman Empire, with the Roman emperor cult of emperor worship. And so it was a comparison that they wanted to show these people that okay, we're what we're into with God is so far superior to what you would see in the Romans. That don't worry about it. Even, and some of them even talk to him and says to just be faithful, even if it is unto death, because what you got afterwards is so much more just magnificent. So then what the scene talks about how that there's the 4 living beings, they're probably a type of cherubim, an angelic being, and 24 elders that represent the martyrs, and then a gazillion angels that were singing praises to God. And then remember, then we had there was a scroll. There was a scroll in God's hand, and it had 7 seals. And an angel said, "Who is worthy to open up this scroll?" And they said that no one in heaven or earth or under the earth or anywhere in any creation was authorized to, or was worthy to open the scrolls. And it said that John cried because he wanted to see what was going on. He understood that this was the basically God's last will for mankind, that it was going to tell the end of the story. And so then one of the elders came up to him and said, "Okay, John, just be comforted, because there is one who is worthy, and that would be Yeshua HaMashiach, the Son of God, the Lamb that takes away the sins of the world." And so that's where we pick up then in chapter 6, is opening up the seals. And so I'm going to go ahead and read it. It is, then Revelation 6 and 1 and 2. Then I saw when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." And I looked, and behold, there was a white horse. The one riding on the horse, on it, had a bow, and a crown was given to him. He went out as a conqueror, so he may conquer, so he might conquer. Now, got a picture of this. Who knew that this guy was going to look like Kenny Rogers? But there it is. There you have it. And so a guy on a white horse. Now there are some that they'll look at this and they say, oh, well, that's this the rider on the white horse. That's a picture of Yeshua or Jesus. Well, no, it's not. And we'll get into that in a second. It's interesting to note that Yeshua will be returning. We know he's returning in Revelation as the Mashiach ben David. He's already come as Mashiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant, and now he's going to come back as the warrior king and the conqueror. And this guy here on the white horse, it says he's a conqueror. But we know that Yeshua is coming. It says even though he's going to be the conquering king, he is opening the seals, it said, as the Lamb. And why is that? Because as the Lamb, that's what made him worthy to open the seals, because of his sinless life and his sacrifice and resurrection on the cross. So that was just a kind of an aside that I was thinking about this week, as why he would come as even though he's going to be the conquering king, the warrior, that John sees him right here as the Lamb, and that's because of his atonement for all mankind made him worthy. So, like I said, some have looked at this idea of the guy on the white horse, that would be Yeshua, because you remember that in other parts of Revelation it does talk about him coming on a white horse, and he's got a sash across his body and writing on his thigh, which is not, he didn't have a tattoo, okay, but it's a he's got a writing on the sash. And so that's a picture. That's when Yeshua comes in, for his second coming. But what this is a counterfeit. Just about for anything that God has, that Hasatan, the devil, Satan, whatever you want to call him, has a counterfeit for it that people will fall for. And this is one of them. He represents possibly a long line of deceitful antichrist and so forth. So this is possibly then the final antichrist that's going to be ushering in the 7-year tribulation. Now, it says that he carries a bow. But guess what? He doesn't have any arrows. So even though he's got the bow, he's going to be, for all practical purposes, ineffective and not able to thwart God's plans, because he's out of ammunition. He doesn't have anything. So, and we know that he's not Yeshua because it says that he's going forth to conquer. And, conquering entails warfare and killing people and domination. And that's just not right now what Yeshua is going to be doing. Later on, he will come in judgment. But at this point, this is not him. So the rider is a counterfeit of Yeshua, and he will deceive mankind. It says that he rules. A crown was given to him. And he rules with a bow, not a sword, and he exercises dominion over the earth. He went out to conquer and went out conquering and to conquer, it says. And but we know that this is not the reign of Yeshua. Now, the crown that was given to him, it says it was given to him. It wasn't a crown that he earned. To become a king or to be part of a kingly kingly family or something to put a crown on him. It was, and this would possibly signify that he had deceived the nations, and the nations had voluntarily given up their authority to this person, possibly the Antichrist. So we do with this right here, we reach an interpretive crossroads in the book of Revelation, and you can tell how a person understands this book and God's prophetic plan by seeing how they understand the first writer. Those that think Revelation is mostly a book of history, they'll believe that this writer is Yeshua or the apostles or Roman empires or something that has already happened in the past. And those that believe that this is a prophetic message that has yet to be fulfilled, this writer is going to be the Antichrist. So we'll go on in Revelation 6:3 and 4. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, fiery red. The one riding on it was permitted to take peace from the earth so that people would slaughter one another. He was given a great sword. All right. And so here's a picture of that, and there were quite a few pictures to choose from on this, but you get the picture. A fiery red horse, and it says that he was given he was granted the ability to take peace from the earth. Now, it doesn't say that he brings war and destruction. No, that's for somebody else. That says all he needs to do is to take peace from the earth, and once peace, which is really, peace is God's gift, shalom, to mankind, and once he takes this peace out of the earth, then men are going to go in and they're going to rush in and go to war and destruction themselves. So I think it's probably just natural that the natural state of things is that nations are going to be against nations, and God gives us a gift of peace. So and it says it was granted. The verse said, and it was granted. The authority was granted to the horsemen, and so that tells us that either directly or indirectly, that this idea of taking peace out of the earth, out of the world, so that war rushes in, is a judgment of God. Now that and it said that people should slaughter one another, so that that it was granted that take the peace out of the earth, and then people would slaughter each other. So we live right now in an age of war and conflict. I believe since World War II, there's probably, depending on how you count it, there's been more than 150 wars of one kind or another on the earth. Some big, some not so big, some really widespread, and some others just very, very localized. But at any one time, there are something like 3 dozen armed conflicts that are ongoing at any one time, and they're taking people's lives, by the thousands every year. Look at what's going on in the Middle East right now with all of the with ISIS and Al Qaeda and Hamas and Syria and all of the stuff that's going on. I mean, it's just that the nations of the world, they'll often spend more than $1 trillion on their military expenses every year. So let's go on with this second seal. I believe that one of the major goals here will be the destruction of Israel, because you can see that coming from other scriptures like Ezekiel 38. where they're again talking about the war that all the nations coming against Israel. So this will be about in this time frame. All right, Revelation 6, 5 and 6. So when the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And behold, I saw a black horse. The one riding on it held a balance scale in his hand. Then I heard something like a voice in the midst of the four living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do no harm to the oil and wine." All right, now here's a picture of a guy on a black Percheron. And he looks pretty foreboding and evil, and he's got the scales in his hand. Now, before I go on, let me just pause here for a second and see if there's anybody that has, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that. Any other questions or comments or whatever? Okay. All right. This third seal, it represents famine, and he's got the scale in his hand. You see the picture of the dude here on the horse, and he's got a scale in his hand. Well, now that's not a scale of justice. Okay. You normally see the people that they'll hold up a scale, and it's normally a female figure with the blindfold across her face. At least the ones in our Justice Department, they got the blindfold and hold up the scale, meaning that justice is blind, and that everybody gets a fair shake and all that kind of stuff, which we know doesn't happen. But whatever. But this scale is not for meting out justice. This scale is for the purpose of measuring carefully the resources that are available to you to eat. Because what does it say? Go back up there to said a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Okay, so what they tell me is that a quart of wheat, when you grind it all up and everything, that was supposedly enough wheat or barley. A quart was enough to make enough bread to sustain a person for one day. That was a daily ration of bread. Now, and a denarius was a day's wages. That's what the standard wages back in those days was. If you went out and worked in the fields or whatever, you got a denarius and a denarii. And so the point is that when he's telling this, the readers of Revelation would know that when he said, "What, you mean a loaf of bread is going to cost a full day's wage?" And well, what about the man's family? Because he would need to have enough money to buy 5 or 6 loaves of bread and whatever else that they would have to eat. So they tell me that this the idea was that the people would have understood that this was about 12 times, that this was inflation, and this was about 12 times the cost of bread in those days, in first century of the current era. So he's talking about hyperinflation or inflation of some sort there, maybe 12 times. And so that would have been devastating. That would cause famine, because people they couldn't afford that. They, you know, one day's wages would feed one person, but it wouldn't feed the whole family. So everybody's going to go hungry. And John says the horse is black, so it seems to infer that whatever food they get will kill them. This is exactly what GMO is purported to do, as it contains poison in its DNA. It could very well be that that some of the things that went with our Franken foods today, and you know, we really, sometimes when I argue with people about this stuff, that you know, they just think I'm just one step out of the loony bin about GMO. That's why we grow a lot of our own food as we can, and buy organic food. And so if you're within the sound of my voice, I would certainly recommend that to the best of your ability that you stay away from genetically modified foods, you know, what do they call it? Engineered, well, GMO and engineered food and so forth. And so, you know, who knows how these things will come about. There's even some speculation that, you know, some of these famines and pestilence that's going to come about in the end times are a result of our own lack of immunity, where things that at one point would not have killed us, and then in the future, because we no longer have antibodies or whatever for that, because we've been, you know, been poisoned with Roundup, you know, you can no longer fight off the infections and so forth. So anyway, that I want want to continue on. Now I'm starting to get out of time. All right, this does represent famine and hyperinflation, and also disparity of wealth. Because what did it say? It said that the spoil not or harm not the oil and the wine. What that means is that, okay, the luxury items are still going to be there. There will be food, but it's just going to cost a lot of money, and only the very wealthy will be able to buy that. We see this right now in Venezuela, where the people are starving, and yet the oligarchia, the oligarchs, the rulers, are able to buy whatever they want, albeit at a higher price. And that is that's kind of typical of lots of places where they have hyperinflation and a great disparity in wealth. So let's continue on. Revelation 6, 7, and 8. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the fourth living creature say, "Come." Behold, I saw a horse, pale greenish gray. The name of the one riding on it was Death, and Sheol was following him. Authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, by famine, and by plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. So this guy here, the fourth seal, it says it comes on a pale. One of the this translation says a pale greenish gray. You know, what does that mean? Greenish gray. That to me brings up the image of like gangrene and something that's moldy, nasty, you know, just yuck. And this one, he says he's given the authority authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill by sword and famine, and by plague, and by the wild beast. Okay, and here's a representation of that, you know, guy that looks like the Grim Reaper, and he's on this pale gray greenish horse. John is saying that the green is the color of Islam. I don't know how pale that is. I do remember, though, that during the Arab Spring, they were watching, you know, taking pictures from up on high, watching stuff going on down in Egypt, and people were purporting that they could see this object going, just sweeping through the streets as looked like, the pale horse or something like that. And I looked at it, and old skeptical me, I looked at it and said, oh, it looks like a reflection off of it, where they're taking the picture through a window and it's a reflection off of something that's going on in the window. But there were a lot of people that looked at that and said, "Ooh, pale horse and death and so forth." And it says that the name of him who sat on it was Death. Now, this last rider shows that there will be a tremendous death toll from this dictatorship. That's the guy on the white horse, who's the dictator, and it will come from the dictatorship and from war and famine and other calamities that are brought on by the various horsemen. Now, just our century, say from 1900, of course we're into the other one, but 1900, we've seen hundreds of millions of people killed by dictators and war and famine. But this is just pale in comparison with the death toll that will come with this ultimate dictator. No wonder Yeshua said that from this time, said of this time, that there will be a great tribulation such as not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor will ever be. So he said this is going to be this is going to be just terrible. John asked the question, does this mean that 3/4 of the world will not be affected? No, I don't think that. I think everything in the world will be affected to some degree, but that means that maybe you line up 4 Americans and one of them is going to die. You line up 4 Mexicans and one of them is going to die. You line up 4 Canadians, 1 out of 4 is going to die. All over the world, possibly, rather than saying, okay, all the deaths are going to be in X country or in X region, whatever, and the rest of the United States, of course, won't get harmed at all because we're the United States. And I think that is a bogus argument for that people come up with, that because we bless Israel or whatever, that the United States is not going to be harmed in some of this stuff. I do believe that there will be some things and Yeshua himself said that there will be all these things in divers places, or meaning in different or various places throughout the world. He didn't say that it would absolutely cover every single thing. So yeah, 3/4 of the people will not be killed, maybe even more, because the Bible does say here that the guy this rider of the pale horse was given the authority over 1/4 of the earth. But it doesn't really say that he would use all of that authority and kill everybody. But even if he did, there's about 7 billion people in the world today, something like that, and that would mean that like 1.4 billion could be destroyed. So you can see easily how that wild animals and could start preying on the sick and injured, and that there will be disease and just all sorts of terrible things, because if you got 1 out of 4 people dying of something, and obviously it's probably not going to be evenly distributed from country to country. It could possibly be that half of a certain country or something might be totally depopulated. So there will be a lot of bloodshed in the days to come. So then go ahead.
Is this the same death that gets thrown in the lake of fire at the end?
No. Oh, this fourth rider.
The fourth rider is named Death, and Death gets thrown in the lake of fire at the end.
Yeah. Its symbolism And yeah, I think the idea of the death will, it will be thrown, because this is evil death. Because even during the millennium now, we have to look at, there will be mortal people in the millennium. Those of us who are believers and go into the millennium as believers, Paul says that our bodies will be changed in a twinkling of an eye. We'll put off corruption and put on incorruption, meaning that we will be immortal at that point. Our bodies won't die. So we'll go through the 1,000 years of the millennium, but there will be people on the earth that survive the tribulation. They will be mortal. They will go into the millennial period, and they will continue to age, maybe at a greater, at a lesser accelerated pace. They may live 300 or 400 years, maybe, but I don't know. At that point, somewhere people are going to die during the millennium if they were mortals before the millennium started, because the Bible does say that it's appointed unto man once to die. Every man is going to die somewhere or another. Either if we are raptured up or taken up at some point, then our physical body at that point ceases to exist, and that is a death, and then we are changed in the twinkling of an eye, it says. And so yeah, we will we will be incorruptible at that point, but this idea of death will be put in the lake of fire, but there will still be natural death on the earth. Or that's my take on it based on what I read. Does that, if that makes any sense to you? And Cynthia is saying that there is speculation that there will be places of Goshen, a disease-free, a famine-free zone, purportedly to display the glory of God during this tribulation. So she says maybe it could be wishful thinking from the folks in these areas, but I think that may vary. Who knows how God is going to protect his own, but it does say that he will protect his own. And he protected the people of Israel in the land of Goshen throughout all the plagues, and he can protect us. If he can do the Cecil B. DeMille thing with the Red Sea, parting of the Red Sea, and the people walk through on dry ground, and all of the marvelous, wonderful things that happened in the Exodus story, he can certainly take care of us. So though all hell is breaking loose on the earth, God is very much in control. You just got to know that he is in control, and he still holds the scroll, and it's only Yeshua that opens the seals. Going on to the fifth seal. When the Lamb opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those slaughtered for the sake of the word of God and for the witness they had. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, O sovereign master, holy and true, how long before you judge those who dwell on the earth and avenge our blood? And a white robe was given to each of them, and they were told to rest a little while longer until the number of fellow servants was complete, their brothers and sisters who were to be killed as they had been. Wow, this is a hard couple of verses for me. Here's a representation of it, a picture that somebody had come up with, with all of these multitudes of martyrs who are under the altar. If you look at what we're seeing today, how many hundreds of people in the Middle East, the Yazidis, the the Christians in Syria and Iraq and everything. I mean, the ISIS is killing them and just torturing them. I mean, it's a horrible thing. They're just in some of the countries, Christianity is just pretty much wiped out totally. There is no more Christianity. Nobody that can openly believe in Yeshua during in some of these countries. So that sort of martyrdom is still going on, or it's actually accelerating in today's world. So in this part of the vision, now John he's brought back to the throne room, he's back to the throne room. He's in the throne room. He sees that these saints are like under the altar. It's not, under the altar, but it's like they are down below. You could call it under the altar because the altar would extend up and over them, and they're at the bottom of the altar because so we don't really know how that works, is under the altar or just all the way around the bottom of the altar. But this kind of emphasizes their lifeblood was poured out as an offering to God. Now, this idea is, if you remember back a few weeks ago in our Torah studies in the synagogue in Tree of Life, we talked about in Leviticus 4 and 7, and it says that when they would make a sacrifice, they would take the blood and they'd sprinkle it on the altar, and depending on what the sacrifice was for, when it was, and everything, they would sprinkle blood either on the altar and on the incense altar, or they would on Yom Kippur they would go in and sprinkle the blood on the mercy seat and around in the Holy of Holies. But so that's the idea. But then if they had extra blood, they said they poured it out at the base of the altar, and that's what God also tells us when we slaughter animals to eat. That you take the blood and you pour it out onto the ground, so that it goes into the ground and back into life. And I think we have to look at these people that are under the altar here as actual martyrs, people who were killed because of their faith. Think ISIS, where these people are going to children and telling them, look, if you will renounce the Messiah, Yeshua, then you can live. And kids as small as 6, 8, 10 years old said, no, I will never deny my Lord, and they kill them. And so that, friends, is a martyr. I've got a quote somewhere over here in my in the rest of my notes. That here it is. It's the way that you live that makes you a martyr, not the way that you die. Now think about that one for a minute. It's the way you live that makes you a martyr and not the way that you die. Meaning that if you don't live for the Lord and somebody kills you, well, all that means is that you're just a murder victim. You're dead. But if you live the life of holiness and you're dedicated to the Lord and you are a believer in Yeshua, and somebody kills you because of that, then that makes you a martyr. So
how does the saying go? If they're looking for people, Christians to kill, would there be enough evidence against you?
There was an old song. Yeah, there was an old song that went about that. If I was arrested for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict me? So somebody wrote a song about that. It was one of those. I think it's one of the Southern gospel genre of songs 30, 40 years ago. So said that they cried out with a loud voice. They cried for justice. Now these, you think, okay, are we supposed to cry out for vengeance? Well, we don't really have to, because remember that God said, vengeance is mine, I'll take care of it. But at the same time, you remember Cain, when Cain killed Abel, God said, even his blood, Abel's blood itself cried out from the ground that, for this injustice. So, and they were given a white robe and said, okay, just wait a little bit longer. And they were instructed to wait. How long did they have to wait? Well, until the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who were killed was complete. Now, what does this mean? Does that mean that they've got to reach a goal, like a goal setting thing? Well, okay, we got to have 100,000. No, I don't think it would mean that. I'm thinking that it's that God has a scenario in mind, and that what he's saying here is that, okay, where you just wait until all of this has played out like in my plan and how it's going to play out, and when that is done, then the vengeance will come along. The words that these words, the number of it, that's a translation. It's not really in the text. And it could mean that, just the character, like I said, it could be just the plan of God, and not particularly a number, a numerical value of people. So, but unfortunately, there will be more martyrs after this time that John saw. Let's go ahead and in Revelations 12, and then 6, 12, and 14, I saw the Lamb open the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became as black as sackcloth made of goat's hair, and the full moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth like fig tree drops, unripe figs, when shaken by a great wind. The heaven ripped apart like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from their places. So the sixth seal is open. The scene shifts from the heavenly throne room, with the saints around, the martyrs around the altar, back to earth, and he describes these cataclysmic events. Now, these events that he's talking about is typical of apocalyptic literature of the day and even before. So you've seen this type of language in the prophets, in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Zephaniah, and even Yeshua himself talked about these kinds of things. Okay, here's this cool picture I got of whatever, the earth opening up and fire coming down from heaven and volcanoes and all sorts of stuff. I mean, pretty nasty stuff. In Zephaniah, as an example, the great day of the Lord is near. It is near and hastens quickly. The noise of the day of the Lord is bitter. There the mighty men shall cry out. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of devastation and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of trumpet and alarm against the fortified cities and against the high tower. That's in Zephaniah 1, 14 and 16. Or Joel 2, 10 and 11 says, the sun and moon grow dark and stars diminish their brightness, for the day of the Lord is great and terrible. Who can endure it? So when John described what he saw, he was not using scientific language, okay? His language was more, I would say, we could say it was like poetic, or I've already used the term apocalyptic. And so, when you see the sun as black as sackcloth of goat's hair, he's coming up with as what we would say, well, it's as black as night, or some of the other descriptions that people will know what it is that we're talking about. So that's the kind of language he's using. Or the moon looking like blood. The moon is not turned to blood. It maybe look something like that, a blood moon. And I would imagine that when all this stuff happens, the blood moon is actually going to look a whole lot redder than these blood moons that people got so excited about in the last year or so. Same with the meteors. I do believe that, you know, some of the meteors, the stars falling in the sky is obviously not what we call the stars, Altair and Deneb and you know, one of my favorites, Betelgeuse, and all of those stars that are up there. They're obviously not going to fall to the earth because those stars are millions of light years away, plus they're also millions of times bigger than the earth, so they can't fall to the earth. We're talking about meteor showers and significant meteor showers. So, all right, let's go ahead, and because we can finish this off. Revelation 15 through 17. Then the kings of the earth and the great men and the military commanders and the rich and the mighty and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they tell the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath is come, and who is able to stand? So the reaction of the people on the earth to all the earthquakes and cosmic disturbance is the same. I mean, it doesn't matter whether they're a prince or a pauper. They're all terrified, and they run. They try to run from the Lamb. And it'd be like as a kid, you pull the covers up over your head so that the monsters can't get you. But says that go into the mountains and caves and try to get the mountains to fall on them so that they won't have to endure this anymore. But it's interesting that non-believers run from God in calamity. Believers run to God in calamity. And so that's where we get our strength from. That's where we get our comfort from. So that's my notes that I always forget. I want to go ahead and look at, just close this out with some observations that and kind of projection of what we're going to be looking at. The seals, the trumpets, and the bowls that are talked about. We've talked about the seals. We got the seventh seal to go, and then we got trumpets and the bowls. Okay, these are not sequential events. These are not, okay, we got to go through the first 7 seals, and then after the 7th seal, then we got 7 trumpets, and then after the 7 trumpets, then we have the 7 bowls. No, these things will overlap. In fact, like these four of the seals, like the 4 horsemen, of the apocalypse, that describes things that are going to be carried out throughout the entire 7-year period of the tribulation. So that's going to be going on concurrently with some of the other things. So chronologically, the trumpets don't follow the seals, the bowls don't follow the trumpets. Okay, and so there said the seals are a summary of the judgments, and they're distributed all over the whole book. Okay, John asks, don't those who have taken the mark of the beast have an inability to die? Yes, that is correct. They cannot die, but they will eventually die, and be after the day of wrath, they will die and they will come under judgment. But during part of this time, they will not be able to die, can't even kill themselves. So let's see, making sure I picked up on all of my my notes here. It said one of the things that is kind of interesting, I think, is that there in the end of the verses here says that who will be able to stand? The question was asked, who will be able to stand? Only a believer, only the believers in Yeshua will be able to stand. And the believer can stand in the face of this great wrath because Yeshua has already taken the wrath that actually belongs to us. We should have had that wrath on us, but he took it on the cross with him. So, people say, well, the law was nailed to the cross. No, if anything was nailed to the cross, it was our judgment was nailed to the cross. Yeshua